February 27, 2022. 3 days after Russia invaded Ukraine, Turkey made one phone call, and Russia's navy was trapped.
There is a body of water so narrow you can throw a stone across it. It is 700 meters wide at its thinnest point, less than the length of 7 football fields. And it is the only exit from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, to the Suez Canal, to the Atlantic, to the world. On one side, Russia, a nuclear superpower with the world's largest land army, 6,000 warheads, a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. On the other side, Turkey, a country of 85 million people.
A complicated ally, a nation that has never quite decided whose side it is on. And under a treaty signed in 1936 in a Swiss resort town, Turkey holds the legal right to lock Russia's entire Black Sea fleet inside the Black Sea, forever, with a single declaration. This is the Bosphorus trap, the choke point that has caused 12 wars, shaped 5 centuries of empire, and in February 2022, decided the balance of naval power in the most important conflict since the Cold War, and almost nobody knows it exists. To understand the Bosphorus, you first have to understand Russia's deepest fear. Russia is the largest country on Earth. It stretches across 11 time zones. It has more border than any other nation on the planet, and it is strategically trapped.
Look at Russia's coast. The Arctic ports, Murmansk, Arkhangelsk, are frozen for months of every year and choked off from the Atlantic by the GI-UK gap, a surveillance corridor between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom patrolled by NATO navies. Russian submarines running for the Atlantic must pass through it. They are tracked before they even leave home waters.
The Baltic Sea? Russia has a tiny sliver of coast near Kaliningrad and St. Petersburg, but the Baltic is essentially a NATO lake. Every exit, through the Danish Straits, past Sweden and Finland, is flanked by alliance members. Finland and Sweden joined NATO in 2023 and 2024. Russia is now surrounded on the Baltic by alliance territory.
The Pacific? Vladivostok and the Russian Far East are thousands of miles from every strategic theater that matters: Ukraine, the Middle East, Europe, Africa, which leaves one option.
The Black Sea, Russia's warm water gateway, its southern fleet, its route to the Mediterranean, to the Suez Canal, to Syria, to Libya, to every theater where Russia has tried to project power since the end of the Cold War. The Black Sea is the key to Russia being a global navy, not just a land army. And the Black Sea has one exit, the Bosphorus.
In July 1936, 9 countries gathered in the Swiss resort town of Montreux and signed one of the most consequential and least discussed treaties in modern history, the Montreux Convention regarding the regime of the Straits.
In one document, the international community handed Turkey something extraordinary: the legal authority to control all military vessel traffic through the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, the 2 straits connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. The Montreux Convention, signed 1936, still in force today.
In peacetime, the rules are manageable. Commercial ships pass freely. Warships from Black Sea nations, Russia, Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, Georgia, can transit with 8 days' notice. Non-Black Sea nations can send warships through, but with strict limits on tonnage and the number of ships.
Aircraft carriers are banned from the Straits entirely. No supercarrier can ever enter the Black Sea. But here is where the treaty becomes extraordinary. In wartime, or when Turkey determines that a conflict constitutes a war, Turkey has the right to close the straits to warships of belligerent nations, completely, unilaterally, without requiring any vote, any coalition, any UN resolution.
Turkey alone decides. Article 19. In wartime, Turkey can close the Bosphorus. No vote required. For 88 years, this clause sat in a treaty that most people had never heard of, until Russia invaded Ukraine. On February 27, 2022, 3 days after Russian tanks crossed into Ukraine, Turkey's foreign minister, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, made an announcement that reverberated across every navy on Earth. Turkey was invoking the Montreux Convention.
Turkey had determined that what was happening in Ukraine constituted a war,
And under Article 19, Turkey was closing the Bosphorus and Dardanelles to the warships of all belligerent parties. Russia could not bring new warships into the Black Sea.
The immediate consequences were devastating for Moscow. 2 Russian Slava-class cruisers operating in the Mediterranean, among the most powerful surface ships in the Russian Navy, could not return to the Black Sea. They were stranded on the wrong side of the gate.
Russia attempted a workaround. In early March 2022, it tried to send ships through the straits by claiming they were returning to their home ports, a specific exception written into Article 19. Turkey caught them, investigated their actual route, and turned them away. Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Admiral James Stavrididis called the move powerful, sensible, and bold, and the effects compounded. By 2025, Ukraine had sunk or disabled 1/3 of Russia's entire Black Sea fleet. Unable to reinforce its Black Sea fleet from the outside, unable to bring in fresh warships, fresh firepower, fresh capability, Russia watched Ukraine systematically dismantle it from the inside.
Ukrainian Neptune missiles sank the Moskva, the flagship cruiser of the entire Black Sea fleet, only the second time a cruiser had been sunk in combat since World War II. Ukrainian sea drones targeted warships at anchor in Sevastopol. Russian naval headquarters was struck.
7 of 13 Russian amphibious assault ships were destroyed or damaged. Plans for a seaborne landing near Odessa, a potentially war-changing operation, were abandoned. By early 2025, Russia had been forced to relocate its surviving Black Sea fleet from Crimea to Novorossiysk, deep in Russian territorial waters, retreating from its own flagship base. A nuclear superpower's navy defeated in its own backyard, because Turkey held the gate.
Here is where the story gets complicated. Turkey invoked Montreux. It closed the straits to Russian warships. It supplied Ukraine with Bayraktar TB2 drones, weapons that proved decisive in the early weeks of the war, stopping Russia's armored advance on Kyiv. But Turkey also refused to join Western sanctions against Russia. It continued buying Russian gas. It became a transit hub for goods flowing to Russia in defiance of EU restrictions. Turkish banks processed transactions that Western banks refused. Erdoğan sat across from Putin at bilateral summits and called him a partner. Turkey was the only NATO member to do all of this simultaneously.
This is not contradictory. It is the most sophisticated geopolitical play of the decade. Erdoğan understands something that most Western politicians do not. Turkey does not need to choose sides. Turkey is the gate, and the gate gains power from being open to everyone, until it isn't. Everyone needs Turkey. Turkey needs no one. By staying commercially close to Moscow, Turkey ensures that Russia never has an incentive to threaten Turkey directly. By keeping the Montreux closure in place, Turkey satisfies NATO and cripples Russia's naval reinforcement. By supplying Ukraine with drones, Turkey extracts goodwill and military co-production agreements from Kiev. In December 2025, when Russian missiles struck Turkish-owned vessels in Ukrainian ports, Erdoğan didn't escalate. He called Putin, suggested a ceasefire for energy infrastructure and ports, offered to mediate. Turkey was attacked. Turkey proposed peace talks. Turkey positioned itself as the indispensable broker, again. Russia needs the Bosphorus. NATO needs Turkey. Ukraine needs both. And Erdoğan, sitting between all of them, collects leverage like rent. This is what a choke point looks like when it's controlled by someone who knows exactly what they have. The Bosphorus has been the hinge of world history for 500 years. Russia and the Ottoman Empire, and then Turkey, fought 12 wars over control of this strait between 1568 and 1918. 12. The control of the Bosphorus was so important that countries bled for centuries to possess it. The Crimean War of 1853? A war over control of the Black Sea and the Straits. Britain and France fought alongside the Ottomans to prevent Russia from dominating the passage. World War I, the Gallipoli Campaign of 1915, the attempt to seize the Dardanelles, was one of the bloodiest and most catastrophic military operations in history. The British Empire threw 500,000 men at these straits. They failed. The geography held. The 1936 Montreux Convention was an attempt to resolve this endless conflict diplomatically, to give Turkey permanent legal authority and, in exchange, guarantee international access in peacetime. It has held for nearly 90 years, but it only holds as long as Turkey holds. What happens if the next crisis is different? What if Turkey is the party at war? Under Article 20, if Turkey itself becomes a belligerent, the straits become entirely subject to Turkish government discretion. Turkey can open them, close them, sell access, deny it. The rules dissolve.
What if Russia, desperate enough, decides that control of the Bosphorus matters more than international law? Moscow has threatened to cut Ukraine off from the sea. It has damaged Turkish-owned vessels in Ukrainian ports. Every time Russia raises the stakes in the Black Sea, it raises the question, at what point does Erdoğan's calculus shift?
And here is the most unsettling thought. Russia has spent decades and billions trying to build naval capability in the Mediterranean to reduce its dependence on the Bosphorus. It maintained a base in Tartus, Syria. But after Assad fell in late 2024 and Syria's new government moved away from Moscow, Russia lost its last Mediterranean foothold.
The Black Sea Fleet is now more isolated than at any point since 1936. The Bosphorus has never mattered more, and Turkey has never had more leverage.
700 meters. That is the width of the most strategically important waterway in the conflict between Russia and the West. A country of 85 million people controls whether Russia's navy lives or dies, whether Moscow can supply its operations in the Mediterranean, whether the Black Sea becomes a Russian lake or a NATO theater.
And that country, Turkey, answers to no one, not completely, not on this. Russia spent 5 centuries fighting for this choke point. It still doesn't have it. NATO spent decades assuming Turkey was a reliable ally. It still can't be certain.
And a treaty signed by 9 nations in a Swiss resort town in 1936, before the invention of radar, before nuclear weapons, before the internet, is the document that is governing the most consequential naval standoff of the 21st century. The Bosphorus Trap was not built overnight.
It was built across 500 years of war, diplomacy, and geography. And the man holding the key has no intention of giving it to anyone. Every system has a pressure point.